In this module, in the next few, we are going to talk about different models and classifications of world Englishes. Different models have been proposed by a number of authors regarding the spread of world Englishes or the spread of English throughout the world. Before we start discussing these models, it is important for us to know why an awareness about these models or why an awareness of the spread of English is important. We need these models because they try to explain to us how English is used in different parts of the world and how it reached those parts of the world. The most common classification that we have of English and that we have already briefly discussed earlier is that of English as a native language, English as a second language, and English as a foreign language. English as a native language is used in countries where English is used as the first language, for example, England, America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. English as a second language is either used by people who immigrate to native English-speaking countries and learn English because they are going to spend the rest of their lives there, or it is used as a second language in countries where English has an official status, for example, Pakistan, India, Philippines, etc. And then the third classification that we have is that of English as a foreign language. English as a foreign language is used in countries where English does not have an official status and it is not used in any domain of life except in the classroom as a foreign language. We have had these classifications for quite some time, and to some extent they were useful. For example, we know why people or the countries where English is used as second language will be more motivated to learn English than people where English is used as a foreign language. However, this classification has certain shortcomings. The first shortcoming is that it causes the term native language, English as a native language, the term native language causes a lot of misunderstandings. One, it is believed that English as a native language or any English, there's just one standard, which means that in all English-speaking countries or native English-speaking countries, everybody speaks the standard language, which is not true, which is far from true actually. In these countries also, different varieties of English are used, and some of them are completely and totally non-standard Englishes. And not all people, for example, if you believe that somebody, or if you know that somebody is, let's say, from America or England, you cannot take it for granted that they would be speaking the standard English because they may come from the part where some other variety of English is used, which is not standard. So one misunderstanding that this classification causes is that all those who are native speakers or all native English-speaking countries use one standard English. If we have this understanding that everybody in native English-speaking countries speaks one standard English, we consider that English superior to other Englishes, which is again not correct because not everybody speaks the standard language or standard English in native English-speaking countries. So this classification is less democratic, not very inclusive because it passes or it considers native English as superior to other Englishes. And then it is also considered that the standard English, which is used in native English-speaking countries, is a good model for all the other countries which are learning English, which again is not correct because in many countries where English is given a lot of importance, for example, Pakistan, the use of the native standard may not be very practical or may not even work at all. For example, if you have your lectures delivered in native British English, you probably will have difficulty in comprehending what is being delivered you may have difficulty understanding the accent, etc. So this model has this shortcoming that it has. The term native language causes a lot of misunderstandings. The other shortcoming that this classification has is the inadequacy of the EFL or also ESL classification. For example, in all the countries where English is used as a foreign language or as a second language, the actual situation or the reality is not really that of foreign language context or second language context. For example, in many parts of Pakistan, in certain social circles, let's say, English is used as second language, and in certain other circles it is used as a foreign language. For example, in the context of private schools and the socio-economic class that comes to these private schools, English is used as a second language because it is used in their households. They watch English films, they talk to their friends in English, they study in English, etc. Whereas in the public sector context, in the same country, let's say Pakistan, the situation of the use of English is not that of ESL, it is more like EFL, because these children who come to public sector schools, they do not use English at home, they do not have access to, let's say, English books to read and improve their English, their teachers don't speak English. So within our country, we have ESL and EFL situations both. The same is true of countries where English is used as EFL, for example, China. In China also, the use of English is becoming more popular, and there are people in China who probably study English only in the classroom but have access to English or exposure to English through other media, for example, books, television. I personally know people, I had a Chinese friend when I was in England who claimed that she had studied all her English through the famous popular American sitcom Friends. So this EFL classification cannot be applied to all situations where we think it's an EFL situation. It actually is the contrast between city and rural areas, and more than that, it is a contrast of socioeconomic class. So if you belong to a certain socioeconomic class, you have more exposure to English and you use English as a second language, whereas in the same country, if you have little exposure to English, you use English as a foreign language. So we needed alternative models because this classification, as we have seen, was certainly inadequate. Certain alternative models were proposed. These described the spread of English in different ways. Some described the spread of English on the basis of geographical locations where English had reached. Some described the spread of English in terms of the regional varieties, the varieties which emerged in different regions. And some described the spread of English in terms of the way it was used by individual users. These models have many advantages compared to the older classification of English. These models present a more pluralistic view of English. They do not suggest any superiority of English. They are more liberal, more democratic, all-inclusive, and they present English not as a single entity but as a plural entity, English is.